Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, for those of you who geek out on this channel all the time, one, thank you very much. Number two, you know that we've been really spun up about this case, Smith Wesson versus Mexico, because, well, candidly, it's one of the biggest Second Amendment cases to get before the United States Supreme Court, like, ever. And what we've been doing lately is we've been geeking out on some of the amicus briefs. We're going to do that again today. This one from the National Association for Gun Rights. You know, our big criticism of this entire suit has been that Mexico's just trying to play the victim here. And they are the victim. They're the victim of their own crappy policies. But you see, they want to shift that blame somewhere else. And in doing so, what they really want to do is they want to strip you, the lawful and responsible gun-owning American, of your constitutional rights. That's how dangerous this suit really is. So today, let's break down what NAGR had to say about this, and let's talk about Mexico's blame game that wants to take your Second Amendment rights. Okay, hey, before we get going too far down the road we're going down, proud to announce that this video is being brought to you by the National Association for Gun Rights. This is the part where I tell you about all the cool things they're doing, but you know what? Let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth. We got their president, Dudley Brown, right here.
Well, thank you, William. We're working in Congress, we're working in state legislatures, and frankly, we're working in the courts. That's how we got connected with William and Washington Gun Law, and we're excited to be a part of what they're doing.
Listen, there is no organization fighting harder for your inalienable rights. Get in the fight today with NAGR. Join them at gunrights.org. Okay, America, we've talked about this case a bunch of times already. We're going to continue to talk about it because it is that big of a deal. The case is Smith Wesson et al. Versus Estados Unidos Mexicanos. Put other ways, Smith Wesson versus Mexico. Now, here's the deal. The Mexican government is suing Smith Wesson because apparently they have a drug cartel problem. Apparently they have a gun violence problem, which is caused by the drug cartel. Apparently they have all sorts of other legal issues going on in their country that's costing them millions and millions of dollars, cost by drug trafficking, human trafficking, gun violence, other types of violence, and the cartels in general. And somehow or another, it's Smith Wesson's fault. That's literally what this suit is all about. Now, this is an amicus brief in support of Smith Wesson that was drafted by the good folks at the National Association for Gun Rights, which means we're going to put a link for them down below in the description box so that you can show them some love. Now, listen, I get a chance to geek out on a lot of briefs. And what I've always appreciated about the National Association for Gun Rights briefs is two things. Number one, the briefs are, in fact, brief. Like it. Only 30 pages. You guys do a good job. You don't slaughter the rainforest. The other thing is that no other Second Amendment organization really throws more shade on their opponents in a very intellectual fashion than do the good folks over at NAGR. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because you see, in order for Mexico to even attempt to succeed on this lawsuit, they have to establish proximate cause, okay? Because here's the claim. The claim is that Smith & Wesson, by manufacturing firearms legally in the United States, is creating a violence problem in Mexico, and that problem was foreseeable, and yet Smith & Wesson continued to manufacture their firearms. And this gets us to a terminology that only civil lawyers, or what you sometimes call ambulance chasers, get to deal with, which is proximate cause, okay? There's two types of causation. There's cause in fact. I punched you, you got a bloody lip, that is the cause in fact. And then there's proximate cause, which is other types of damages which could naturally flow from the negligence and therefore would be foreseeable by the negligent party. The definition of proximate cause, and I hate to bore you with this, but you need to understand this. Proximate cause is generally understood to be, proximate cause is often used as a standard in determining liability for torts and criminal offenses. Under tort law, the test for proximate cause is often foreseeability. If the harm that occurred was a foreseeable consequence of the action, then that action is a proximate cause of the harm. So when we get into normal negligent actions, you know, you run a red light and you cause a T-bone accident. Yeah, you are the proximate cause. You're also the cause in fact. But if we want to get a few more degrees of separation, let's say that we got an oil refinery that's based on a river who negligently has a massive spill. That massive spill goes downriver, gets into a salmon hatchery and ruins everything. Okay, is that foreseeable? It absolutely is, because The oil company would have known that had they spilled into that river, that anything that lied downriver was actually subject to their negligence. So that's the foreseeability. What Mexico is arguing is that, listen, Smith & Wesson is manufacturing these absolutely lawful firearms. People are lawfully purchasing them. At some point, that lawful purchase gets into the hands of unlawful people. Of course, Smith & Wesson has nothing to do with that. And those unlawful people then illegally run them across the border and get them to the Mexican drug cartels. And then the Mexican drug cartels illegally use the firearms for all sorts of violent actions. And therefore, that is foreseeable for Smith & Wesson. That's actually the claim that Mexico is making here. Well, the good folks at NAGR just simply call BS on this. And actually, they take the blame and they put it right back where it belongs, which is with Mexico. Yeah, Mexico is the victim here. Mexico is the victim of their own terrible, horrible, ridiculous policies. And NAGR has the courage to call them out on it. The court need not look far to find the independent events that can more readily explain Mexico's alleged injuries related to law enforcement, medical, judicial, and economic costs. Unsurprisingly, state-level costs related to state-level issues are far more tied to state-level policies, including Mexico's own policies, than they are to petitioners' market activity. That's right. Shockingly, when you have a problem in your own local community, the likely causation of that problem is the government of your own local community. And what NAGR points out, in finding petitioner manufacturers and distributors liable for Mexico's failure to properly police its own territory, the First Circuit ignored the obvious and more important alternative causes of the rise in cartel violence stemming from Mexico's own actions and inactions. And that's exactly why we are calling this blame shifting. Now, here's the thing. If Mexico thinks that the United States firearms industry has somehow or another contributed to their problems with drug cartel violence, what they have failed to do is look in the mirror and look at their own policies. Because let us remember that the now ex-president of Mexico had a policy called hugs, not bullets. He was basically going to placate. He was basically going to cater to and coddle the drug cartel industry. And this is what NAGR very wisely points out. Cartel violence can also be linked to Mexico's decision to respond to narco-terrorism with pacifistic policies. Upon taking office in 2018, former President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador instituted a widely derided hugs, not bullets policy that gave freedom of action to the very cartels that Mexico now blames petitioners for enabling. Oh, and then in typical Mexican fashion, shockingly, it was the corruption. Why is that? Well, Mexico created 2 extra police agencies that are going to crack down on the cartels. They were immediately infiltrated by the cartels. And what did the stats show? Well, the following. Arrests by Mexico's National Guard fell to 2,800 in 2002 from 21,700 in 2018. Extortion surged since 2018, and organized crime groups operated in 29% of Mexico's municipalities in 2020, compared with just 16% in 2017. Yeah, that's right, Mexico. Your problems are created by your government. But to be honest, and to keep it right down the middle, yeah, actually the United States government has in fact contributed to your problems. Not Smith & Wesson, not any other firearms manufacturer here in the United States. No, but has the United States government contributed to this problem? They most definitely have. And as NAGR wisely points out, by the same token, cartel violence can also be more readily attributed to the lax U.S. policy towards the U.S.-Mexico border under the outgoing presidential administration than to petitioners' alleged conduct. How U.S. officials approach the southern border has a dramatic effect on the operations of Mexican cartels, affecting their ability to profit from smuggling drugs, contraband, and people across the border, and thereby also affecting their ability to fund their operations in Mexico. And that's the thing that you need to understand, America, is that it is the person trafficking, it is the human trafficking that has occurred across the border that has allowed the drug cartels to profit in areas and levels that they had never ever imagined. The cartel's war chest for wreaking havoc in Mexico grow and shrink depending on how lax or strong U.S. border enforcement is. Over the last several years, weak U.S. security of the border stoked illegal migration, an industry that cartels control, enriching them immensely. Yeah, that's right. If you want to understand where the cartels are getting all their money, it no longer really so much comes from drug, it comes from trafficking humans across the border, a policy made only possible by the Biden administration. And so for that reason, NAGR correctly and wisely points out expanded cartel violence is thus a far more foreseeable result of Mexico's unfortunate history of public corruption, failed law enforcement policies, and of the U.S.'s lax border policies over the past 4 years that enrich the cartels than it is of petitioners' business conduct. Conduct which is, of course, legal in nature. Listen, the case once again is Smith Wesson et al. The Estados Unidos Mexicanos. We're going to go ahead and link up the amicus brief that we geeked out on today. Kudos to the good folks over at the National Association of Gun Rights. Thank you so much for writing a brief that actually was brief and very easy to understand and not completely exhausting to get through. For that reason, we're going to go ahead and put a link up down below in the description box so all of you can show them some love. If you got any other questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington Gun Law by now. But if you don't, that's okay. That information is down there in the description box. If you got an idea for a video we should be doing around here, cool. Click on that link right there. Let us know all about it. If you just want to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, the ability to do all of that is right down there in the description box. And then finally, and most importantly, let's remember that part of being a lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.